Here we go, On It podcast with my brother, Mike Salemi. Very, very happy to have you here in town. You and your boy Eli, the video man that makes it all happen, have been staying at my house, and it's been an absolute treat to have you guys getting into some weird shit, busting out all the instruments and stuff like that last night. And very blessed to be, to have you here with us, but also to be able to be on the receiving end of some of your wisdom. You get to put me through a brutal Eldoa stretch session yesterday that had me high as fuck for about 90 minutes.
We opened you up good.
Yeah, in the best way. It's funny, in different practices like yoga and things like that, as you begin to open and stretch the body, how much you can feel the floodgates open, not only with thought and intuition and things like that, but just like feelings fucking just start popping up. I mean, I was seeing purple with my eyes closed and just kind of levitated over into a meeting with Aubrey and our superfoods team and was not really prepped for that. I'm sitting down trying to keep my shit together and started taking deep breathing, and Aubrey smirks at me. He's like, "What's going on, brother?" And I stand up behind my chair. I'm like, "Oh, I'm cool. It's no big deal." And then, got a kombucha and I was like, I think I need to lay down. He was like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "I just did some kind of a spinal stretching that opened me up, and I'm feeling all sorts of shit. My hands were buzzing, my feet were buzzing. It was incredible, but I feel great, high in the best way. No hangover, no problems, like a good drug, as I like to say.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, brother. So very much appreciative of that. And then later on today, you're gonna put our coaches through a little Bulgarian bag work, some nuances to the kettlebell game, and then hopefully we'll have time for some more Eldoa, so the rest of these guys can experience what I'm trying to describe here. So, Mike, you have a wealth of knowledge in so many things. Met you at PaleoFX with the Mind Pump crew. They introduced me to a number of excellent people, Dr. Michael Ruscio being one of them, yourself being one of them, and then, of course, the On It crew, largely why I have this job. So a lot of love to the Mind Pump crew. But let's just start with the basics. What got you started in weightlifting?
So what got me started in weightlifting was when I was 15 years old, I was actually making the transition as a gymnast. So I was never really high-level gymnast, but I experienced a pinched nerve in my back. And in order to heal that injury, I went to a specific chiropractor. And fortunately, he was a drug-free world champion powerlifter. I think he was in the 220 division. He was benching close to 600.
Damn!
So he rehabbed me right. And I'd always been into conditioning training, especially having a very disciplined approach to it. And he goes, "You know what, I think you might like this. Why don't you come train with me? I'll build you up and we'll see what you can do with it." So at that time, he took me into what was a private basement powerlifting gym. I've always trained in kind of garages, cinder block rooms. It's usually only on vacation that I'll train at a commercial gym, and it feels very foreign to me.
Yeah.
But this gym was called the Palace Gym, and it was a very small knit. There was only about 20 of us, but they were all very high level, very disciplined guys. And we would get together usually at lunchtime or after work when these guys would get off. And this guy, Mike Ludovico, as well as the owner of the gym, really just took me under his wing. And that place really became my home. I mean, if I was going through tough stuff or anything, like I would always go to that gym. And there was even like a chill room upstairs, some just old school couches and a wine room. And the community there, they were actually all garbage men or police officers. So, but you got and
Public service,
and all these guys, man. I mean, you got to think these guys were old school garbage men. So the way these guys used to train, especially they used to pack the can on their shoulder before all the automatic stuff. So these guys, if it was one lift that these guys were badass at, it was the deadlift. These guys just had grown man strength on the deadlift because they just had built up all this awkward kind of conditioning strength and abilities from lifting garbage. So they took me under their wings, and that's really where I started falling in love with it. And then there is where I started getting exposed to Louie Simmons' work.
Okay.
And the gym was very, very focused on starting with West Side programming. And once I was about 18 turning 19, I really wanted to take it to the next level. So I was fortunate enough to go out to West Side Barbell, trained with Louie for about a month, got to meet guys like Chuck Vogopol, and really just left a big, big lasting impression on me. So my kind of upbringing started in powerlifting and then transitioned into Olympic weightlifting and now kettlebell sport.
Fuck yeah. That's an incredible lineage, especially when you think about the people that touch you and how that transforms your life. Louis, Rogan calls him a fucking maniac, just an insane guy. but he's developed so many great tools. He really has. And just thinking of conjugate method and how do we hit all the different forms in our training protocols to get maximum potential out of our bodies. There's a lot there. So what have you noticed as you started to make that change into more of the odd types of training, utilizing kettlebells instead of traditional bench, squat, deadlift, and snatch, clean, jerk, those kind of things?
Well, I think the transition from more of just a pure barbell type of training, which I still love, to the more unconventional, whether it's Bulgarian bag, kettlebells, club bells, anything like that, also kind of paralleled and is paralleling right now my evolution as a person. So even though I love the gym and I really gravitate towards the gym environment, now as much as possible, I just want to get outside and use tools that I can take on a hike. You can go to the beach. Every time I travel, anyone who knows me well knows I always travel either with a kettlebell in my bag. That's why my suitcase is usually all banged up. On this trip, I brought 2 Bulgarian bags with me. So I just want to get outside. I want to touch the earth, go barefoot, and just have fun moving through. Any type of free expression of movement is really what I love right now. So the unconventional tools, not only do they develop strength and a whole host of abilities, whether it's strength, flexibility, coordination, any of those abilities of what it takes to develop a well-rounded athlete in a way that's different from a barbell. There's a time and a place for sure, but when you're talking about especially making a transferable skill to, or transferable quality to, let's say, fighting, for example, it's like you're never really going to move in one plane. You need to be able to move in all directions, and you need to be able to handle. I mean, even just in life, when you pick up your kid, when you pick up Bear, like you're never picking them up like in a straight line. You're always throwing them on your shoulder or playing with them on the ground. You're always so the ability to go from different position to transition from standing to the ground has been really something that I've enjoyed and seen transfer in myself and also the other athletes I've worked with.
Yeah. I think you touched on a great point. I think for a lot of people in sport, there's definitely a big push for GPP, your general physical preparedness. And you can achieve a lot of that through basic primal movement patterns, push, pull, squat, hinge, lunge, twist, those kind of things. But at a certain point, you need to get off balance. You need to train things that are going to, be similar to when you're on a football field. You're not in a perfect squat, half the time, one leg's in forward of the other. You're pushing, but it's not, with a bench behind you. You're pushing with your own feet hooked into the ground, those kind of things, pulling, doing the same stuff. There's so much more transfer there as you begin to dive into these odd tools. And it doesn't mean that you take, it's a replacement for these other things. But I think there's a tremendous benefit as we start to add in some of this stuff. So as we start talking about weird shit, my man and your man, the great teacher, Paul Chek, comes up. And, it's a beautiful transition here because, segueing from podcast to podcast, we recently had my buddy, Dr. Andy Galpin on, who wrote the book Unplugged. And he talked about the importance of getting back out into nature and a lot of the different, not only the science behind why that's important for our mind, body, and spirit, but the benefits, and how we can tackle, getting outdoors more and incorporating these things. So one of the things that I'm always trying to do is kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? And we talked a bit about that at dinner the other night. So yeah, you take a kettlebell to the beach, not only are you getting sunlight, you're getting grounding, you're getting negative ions from the ocean, but you're also getting a pretty awesome workout in on an unlevel surface, right? So there's many great things that are going to be causing physiological adaptation, as well as just priming your body and your emotional state from getting outdoors. So had Andy Galpin on, we got you on. Next week, our dude Paul Chek's coming to town.
It's going to be
so
epic.
Hell yeah. So let's dive into that. You're one of Paul Chek's #1 students. You've been through all of his training. You finished recently, is that correct?
No, so I'm still in the program. I mean, to be a Chek practitioner, it's a very involved practice. I mean, it takes years. If you're on the program and you're following it dedicatedly, I mean, it could take anywhere from 5 to 7 years. There's 4 levels, well, really 5 if you include exercise coach in the practitioner side, which is the more corrective performance side of things, assessments, stuff like that, orthopedic side. Then you have the HLC side, which there's 3 levels. Now, to go through both those and also to do the work, because in order to graduate to each level in the Chek system, you have, especially at the upper levels, you have to submit case studies and whatnot. You really have to put in your time and practice. So I've started going through the system, but I've worked very, very closely with Paul for 2.5 years to rehab my own injuries from sport, as well as to kind of build me back up. So my work really focused with Paul on the client side.
Yeah, that's perfect. What got me into Paul Chek, actually, I mentioned this too, was at dinner, was I had a strength coach back in the day when I was first getting into fighting. And I've told this story before on Rogan's, but thick New York accent. And he was like, "You fought a lot," and I was like, "That's a fucking weird thing to say to a dude." Like we got protein shakes and shit like that. Like I fart about as normal as everybody else does, right? It's like, no, man, I think you got a food intolerance. And I was pretty resistant to it at first, but he put on the old Flatten Your Abs Forever video on VHS. And I was like, fuck, man, this guy knows exactly what he's talking about. And, did an elimination diet, added back gluten in, and it just blew my mind, the difference. I couldn't breathe out of my nose, really felt bogged down, had a ton of gas. So I was like, all right, you were right, sorry. And then, that started the path of me diving into how to eat, move, and be healthy, the last 4 doctors you'll ever need, and really just branching out into Paul's wealth of knowledge. What made you want to do that? Did you want to, you said you wanted to work on yourself first, and that's kind of why I went to HLC, the holistic lifestyle coach, not to be a coach in that, but because I knew I needed to work on meditation. I wanted to learn Qigong. I wanted to learn breath work and just dive into that for myself. Is that really where it started for you?
Well, for me, I was first introduced to Paul's work when I was 18. So I was competitive in powerlifting at a decent level. And where I was a strength and conditioning coach at, fortunate for me, and I feel very blessed for this, the entire facility was really modeled after all of Paul's teachings. So we had high-level check practitioners there, HLCs, we had hypnotherapists, very good chiros. So it was...
Where's this place?
It's no longer, unfortunately, but it was in the Bay Area. Yeah, and the owner of the facility was one of the first check practitioners in the Bay Area, and he really took me under his wing. And at that time, I was doing the best I can with the knowledge that I had. I was still very disciplined in my diet, or what I knew at the time. Like I think it was the whole EAS approach, and I had a lot of gas too.
Yeah.
But then
Bioplex, isn't that good for the gut?
Yeah.
That's strange.
I was wondering why I was having all those gas, and later, I don't think it's cool today, but still, before it was cool to look at your own poop and interpret what that's telling you about essentially like the internal report card of what you have. Now, lab testing is very popular, et cetera. But for me, what his name was Brian Sham introduced me to not only was this holistic model of looking at high performance, but also really how to eat, move, and be healthy, which still to this day, I think is probably the greatest contribution as a resource to not only just health in general, but to athletic performance, because I think it's very important, and this is something that I feel passionate about, that health should form the foundation for high performance. And I think people think that there are two completely different things. Health should always be the basis there, because if you don't have enough life force to endure the rigors of training, then you're always going to be draining, and you're always going to have some type of injury, or it's going to show up as some type of challenge, whether it's relationship wise, if you're not managing yourself. And that's really what you learn in How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy. And I think the beauty of the HLC program, especially like level one is all about healing you. It's all about you first. So getting yourself healthy, getting your mind right, managing the 6 foundation principles, which if people took care of the 6 foundation principles, so managing your thoughts, your breathing, your hydration, your nutrition, your movement practice, balancing working in and working out, and then your sleep. If someone managed those 6 foundation principles well, that would take care of about 90%, if not more, of all the health-related dis-ease that we experience today. So just focusing on that, and it's something that I'm still reading at least yearly, and every time that I read it, I'm usually ready for something new to incorporate into my own life. So it's never something that gets old, and I think that was Paul's the 4 Doctors was a great contribution, but that's really where it started, and that's still like a timeless classic for me.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually, there's only one book I've read more than How to Eat, Move, and Be Healthy, and that's A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. And that's because I'll pick up, as with Paul's books, I'll pick up things and reintegrate them into my life. And just as with diet, there's no one-size-fits-all diet. Said it 1,000 times, I'll say it 1,000 more. But there's different points in your life where you need different things, and so you may eat a certain way for a period in your life and then notice some changes as you listen to your body. And there may be some information that doesn't resonate with you right off the bat. And as you rehash and go back through the material, it resonates with you the second or third time that you read it. 100%. Yeah, that definitely was a game changer. So I want to dive into a little bit. One of the four doctors, let's talk about the four doctors here.
Okay.
So we got Dr. Happy, Dr. Movement, Dr. Diet, and Dr. Quiet. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
So of those four, there is one, if we talk about Dr. Happy, we got to take care of us. We got to play more. We got to be happy. We got to do the things that bring us joy in life. And the things that bring us joy in life that don't come at a cost. Paul used to say that you don't fucking reward yourself. If your goal is weight loss, you don't reward yourself with shit food at the end of your 20 pounds of loss, right? You don't take 2 steps forward to take 1 step back. That's not a real reward, right? And I think people can understand that a bit. Dr. Movement, yeah, you need to fucking move. You need to move properly. You need to take care of body mechanics, things like that. Dr. Diet, we've been diving into that quite a bit. Figuring out which foods you have an intolerance to can be a game changer, and that's cheap. You don't have to do a $2,000 blood test or some other nonsense. You do an elimination diet for 30 days. You add back in some problematic foods and see where you sit with them. But Dr. Quiet has been a massive one for myself, and I think it is highly important for men in general, especially high-level performing athletes that you've worked with and I've worked with. It's just something in the West that we fucking leave out. It's like, oh, that's shit women do, or that's shit yogis in the East do, and what's the importance, and why should I practice meditation? Why should I practice breath work? Why should I focus on sleep? Why should I take naps when my body needs it? Mm-hmm. So let's dive into some of that. What has really benefited you and the fighters that you've worked with Dr. Quiet?
So I think you hit the nail on the head. For me personally, it's the doctor that I need to focus on the most. I mean, I think any high level or high performing athlete, to get to any level, it's very rare that you'll find an elite level athlete when have you ever met an elite level athlete that was undertrained? It's very rare, if ever, to happen. So, but the benefit that, Dr. Quiet is the doctor responsible for introspection, reflection time, rest, repair. It's synonymous with the parasympathetic nervous system. So as athletes, for the most part, we're all go, 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 go. So the message for me, especially in my own, not only movement practice, but my own reflection practice, is to incorporate any tool that I can with where I'm at in that moment that will help me kind of rebuild the system. So for me right now, and we were talking about this a little earlier, I just shot what'll be a small program with Paul on this concept of working in, that to my knowledge, I was totally unfamiliar with before I was introduced to his work. And just a little bit about working in terms of how it can directly benefit performance and performance athletes. So there's this idea out there that, working out, in order to get ahead, we have to work out. So a workout is any type of activity that is an energy expenditure, an activity that costs the body more in resources than it brings in. So a working in exercise is the opposite. A working in exercise is an exercise that could be Tai Chi, could be any type of moving meditation, that actually brings more energy into the system than it costs to produce. So if you think about athletes, when we're training every single day, we're pulling money out of the ATM, but very few of us are actually putting it back in. So because working in is synonymous with the parasympathetic nervous system, it can activate the rest, repair, digest side. So there's specific criteria that Paul has created to let the athlete know, am I in fact working in or am I in fact working out in this moment? So briefly on the 4 criteria, which is pretty interesting. So the first criteria to know if you're working in or working out, whether it's a Tai Chi movement or something as simple as a breathing squat. Number 1, the tongue should stay moist. If the tongue starts drying out, you're entering a more sympathetic state, because the tongue is an extension of the visceral system, the digestive system. And so what happens when we get hungry, for example, or when we're about to eat, our saliva increases. As soon as that starts drying out, we know we're moving into a more workout state.
Yeah, if you ever had cotton mouth while you're running, you're huffing and puffing hard. I've noticed in breath work, especially in things like even breath of fire with my tongue pressed to my mouth, I have to swallow saliva often. That's how activated the parasympathetic becomes. So sorry to cut you off. But
No,
keep,
no.
keep diving in.
Well, I think just to piggyback on that note, I think it's really interesting. It probably should be mentioned that certain breath work can be very sympathetic, just like certain forms of Tai Chi. Just because it's Tai Chi does not necessarily mean it's a parasympathetic activity. Certain forms of Tai Chi can very much send you into a sympathetic state. So there's kind of a distinguishment that should be made there. But in general, when the tongue starts drying out, you're moving into more of a flight or fight state. Then the second thing is digestion should improve. So anyone who's had a big Thanksgiving dinner and gone for a walk, I'm sure has had the experience that their digestion improved following that meal. Or if you go out to a restaurant and you just go for a walk to your car, usually you feel better. So the idea is that you can do a work-in exercise on a full stomach. It'll stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system, increase your rest repair functions, and that's one way you know you should be able to do the exercise on a full stomach.
Then you'll take one of those nice big police cops, the poop
Pussy policeman, yeah.
poop police. Paul has an excellent. We'll get that if not for this episode, definitely for Paul's. But a little. We might run it for fucking both because people need to be comfortable with looking at their own shit. But yeah, he's got the poop lineup, right? So you've got all your bad guys up against the wall in a classic cartoon lineup, and this perfect giant poop with a police hat on that looks like the model shit, right? That's what we're aiming for. Not the bodybuilder poop, not the sludgy guy or the ghost poop. But yeah, there's
Not the flasher.
not the flasher. Yeah. Yeah, getting comfortable with that. So what are the other benefits? Again, sorry to jump in there, but
No, please.
so we have these reminders, right, that can put us in place on working in versus working out. Ways to tell if we're on the right track when we're actually trying to have a working in practice.
Right. And so there's two more. There's sweating, which is a common sign of someone working out. And then the last one is really a combination between heart rate and breath rate because they work together. So if your heart rate starts increasing, that's your signal to know, okay, this is a working out activity. And correlating this to performance, when I was working with Paul, one of the things that he did to really benefit my kettlebell training and my kettlebell competitions was we actually, my favorite work and exercise, and these are all in Paul's book, is a breathing squat. Very simple exercise, not threatening at all. You can do a squat even in a gym if you wanted, and people wouldn't look at you funny. But just a breathing squat. And with the breathing squat, what we were working on was getting to the ability where I could go 20 minutes consistently, where I would stay and manage those 4 criteria. So my heart rate and breathing rate wouldn't increase. I would not sweat. My tongue would still stay moist. And if I was to eat, my digestion would improve. But once we got to that, then we started adding in a kettlebell. So then I started doing whether it was a combination of a very, very light load. We're talking like 6 to 8 kilos, a clean and jerk, and or a swing into the overhead position. Now, as I was performing that activity, if I started noticing that my breath rate or any of those markers started increasing, I would immediately set the weight down, go back into a breathing squat, and then calm the heart rate down. And ultimately, I think it almost took about 6 months, but I was able to do at a light load, I think it was like with 2 8s or 2 12 kilos, about 20 minutes continuously where it was a work and exercise.
Wow.
So you can imagine in whether it's competition or in a fight or anything like that, the longer that you can stay in a parasympathetic state. I mean, when you go flight or fight, the window starts really closing, right? You're not able to, your imagination starts closing down, what you can foresee in the future. All these things start really narrowing the viewpoint. So the aperture changes. But if you can stay calm, relaxed, repaired, you can stay in that state of relaxed readiness or the zone, however you want to call it, your ability to manage your external environment will be incredibly more heightened. So that was one direct carryover that I noticed of just incorporating a working in activity and then how it related to being more physically fit as well as a more centered and more mindful athlete in sport.
Hell yeah. So let's paint a picture of that. One of the first things that caught me when I started going through Paul's working in breath work, standing, qigong, things like that, it was reverse breathing. So you exhale diving into the bottom of a squat and you inhale coming up, right? So it was almost the reverse. Like I'm used to taking my breath at the top, dropping down on a full breath of air, brace the spine, and then fucking come out of the hole hard, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh, I'm going to exhale down and inhale coming up. And along with as he goes through all the other 6 zones. But it's interesting to me. So, I mean, I say that to illustrate for the people, like if you want to try this for yourself, this was my first starter too, where I was like, holy shit, I feel better doing this. It's very calming, to exhale down on a full exhale and then slowly come up. And the idea is to go slow, not to go fast. It's not a workout, and we're trying to build our faculties from the inside out using the breath and connecting it to the body. But it's interesting to me that you would incorporate that with kettlebells. So did the breathing stay the same? Was it reverse? Like as the kettlebell came down, were you exhaling and then inhaling it up?
So a few interesting points on that. So there's different schools of kettlebell thought. So the more let's say foundational or hard style kind of system of training, it's very correlated to high speeds of movement. And anytime there's high speeds of movement, spinal stability is of paramount importance. So in that situation, you're going to use what we call a paradoxical breathing pattern. So in a hard style breath, let's say it's a swing, it's a very explosive swing. You would inhale on the lowering phase, then you would maintain compression, and then exhale on the raising phase, right? But in sport, which is an endurance-based activity, the breathing switches to something called
Okay.
anatomical. So in that, it's actually correlated exactly like a work in breath, where we
Okay.
exhale on flexion and inhale on extension. So the way I was using it with the working in activities was exhaling on flexion, inhaling as you extend. Now, interestingly enough, the breath that we use in a work in practice goes hand in hand with our anatomy and physiology. So anytime that the body moves into extension, external rotation, and abduction, or away from the midline, that is matched with inhalation because the rib cage is opening. Or we're coming, let's simplify, anytime we're coming out of the fetal position. Anytime we're going into the fetal position, which is matched with flexion, internal rotation, and adduction, or moving towards the midline, when the rib cage closes down, that's naturally matched with exhalation, breath. So we're working hand in hand with our physiology to, once again, increase our life force energy, or however you want to call it. But we're working with that. And this is another really key point that I really had to learn working in, because in the gym, we're always taught you got to be super technical, right? Like you got to align the spine, make sure everything, set the hips back, all this stuff.
Yeah, you're always in that one fixed. That's one thing that Mind Pump, I love how they crush and go against, the norm. But like the idea that you always have to have this perfect spinal alignment. It's like, when does that happen on the fucking football field? When does that happen in gymnastics? Never, never. Like they took so much shit for this video they did on a rounded spine plank, where you're just hollow back plank. And how much more do you feel the abs activate when you get into that position? And even just flowing from neutral spine into the rounded back, hollow back, plank. But that's a fucking static move. You're not under load. You're not going to get hurt doing that. And every chiropractor and sports phys guy and their mom chimed in about, you're going to fucking hurt somebody, showing people how to do shit like that. And it's like, no, this is the way we move. This is the real world. This is what happens in sports. This is what happens in a fight, and even looking into lifting, like it's cool to have a perfect, deadlift, and we're under a lot of load. But you look at strongmen doing the Atlas stone and shit like that. How would you pick up a fucking boulder in the real world?
Mm-hmm.
There's no handles. You're going to reach over that thing with the fucking rounded upper back. You're going to brace the thoracic, take a deep breath in, and pick it up. That's how we move shit in the real world. So this idea that breath has to be at a certain cadence and the spine has to be in perfect alignment, it's just, it's one of these dogmas like diet, where you got to eat 500 grams of carbs to be loaded up, and you got to have this, you got to have that. And people attach those things as a part of their identity, right? This is the way it is. It's the way it's always been. It's the only way. And it's just not that way. So I really appreciate, people that kind of go against the grain and say, hey, there is a different way.
Yeah, because what happens if you get put in that situation? I mean, me and you, I had a great time rolling with you on the mats yesterday. It's like we were doing throws. It's like there was no perfect posture in any of that. So if all you know is how to move in one plane or in one fixed pattern, you leave yourself wide open for a whole host of adverse things to happen. So with being taught, especially that everything has to be perfect in the gym, and being grown up in that mindset, when I came to transition into working in activities, one of the first things that Paul worked on me was being less technical. And I was like, what? Like, he goes, allow your spine to round, go on the bottom of the squat, just feel your body there. Don't be so rigid. Allow your neck to hang, and then just hang out. And when you're ready, you come back up. And that whole concept might seem simple, but if what you've been programmed is every single time you flex at the hip, you need to have perfect spine alignment. I was just like, this is amazing. And then all of a sudden I started, oxygenating the body, and that's the purpose of working in, is really to pump the body, right? So if we're too rigid in any of these movements, then we don't defeat the purpose, but we're not nearly going to experience the magnitude of benefit we can. So I've noticed tremendous benefit from just also letting go to that attachment of perfection as it's expressed in the gym, as well as it manifests into other aspects of my life.
100%. There's so many parallels between what we learn in sport and in the weight room, and then how that extrapolates out into life. And a lot of people, myself included, talk about how we manage stress and the things that build character and resiliency and make us a little tougher, a little more hard-nosed, so that we can tackle life's challenges and things like that. But that's a very male, strong-oriented mindset. And there's still, on the flip side of that, this feminine flexibility, the yoga, the difference between the mighty oak and the weeping willow that blows within the wind, right? And I was just out at Spirit Ranch, and Parangi was saying that this beautiful quote. We'll have him on the podcast soon. So, blam, another fucking segue, son. But when you're flexible, you'll never be bent out of shape, right? And there's so much that extrapolates that, not only from a physical standpoint, which we're talking about, but how that goes with life. Life is always fucking changing. There's always new challenges, and your ability to adapt and mold with those challenges and changes as they come can greatly enhance your perspective and your quality of life. So you're not so rigid in, this is the way that it's always been. I've had this job for 20 years and now it's gone. What the fuck am I going to do? Or that was my wife for 15 years and now it's over. She's leaving me for this young strapping buck that I can't compete with. Whatever the case is. Yeah, that's phenomenal, man.
And that's the feminine principle. Like, I'm here, I'm having a great time here at On, and I was in the cafe earlier, and you guys got some really fit, pretty athletic guys here. And one guy looked like he was pretty badass on the mats, and his shoulders were literally up to his ears. Like, I was waiting for him to breathe and exhale and just let it. And I wanted to go behind him and be like, bro, like, chill out a little bit. But you can just see, like, just adding in and these are all feminine principle stuff, the cold, wet, darkness, moisture, relaxation, being able to be flexible. These are all feminine qualities that, if brought into the right, and if used properly, will enhance, the more that you can come into it. This is one thing that Paul really worked on me with was, when we're training, every single time you hop in the gym, the goal is to exceed your prior performance by 1 to 3%. If you can't honestly look at yourself and exceed the last performance by 1 to 3%, you don't belong in the gym. So that's a pretty scary notion, especially if every single time you're in there, you're trying to train and bang. So what that does is it forces you to look at yourself and the choices that you're making and really say, like, okay, am I training? Am I draining? And if I'm honest with myself, maybe today is a day where I might need to get to sleep earlier. Because if tomorrow, it really puts you in a position where you have to take responsibility for what you're creating moment to moment and day to day. So whether that's going to sleep earlier or eating better food or possibly incorporating a work-in practice or maybe a sauna night. So all these tools that we have, especially access today as in the modern world, we can use these things to our advantage so that we can hopefully use them to our benefit in the gym or on the mat or whatever it may be. But those are all recovery. Those are all yin-based activity, whereas today's society, we're very yang. We're very expressive. That's how, at least in my experience, how we're congratulated is by all of the output we're doing. And I think the more that I've started working inward and want to continue doing that, because I know it's an area that will help me also produce more and from a place of authentic creation, as opposed to doing it because I'm trying to meet someone else's expectations, or whether it's society, family, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, everyone wants to know what your deadlift PR is, not fucking how long you meditated in full lotus. Dude, I meditated so fucking hard yesterday. It was the best session. I saw the full spectrum, red light, yellow, orange, green, fucking I finished with purple. It was the best session ever. Say what? What? Who gives a fuck about all that color you saw in your third eye? Tell me about your fucking 555 PR.
I remember yesterday after your Aldo session, I forget what you said exactly. You're like, 7 chakra, boom. All the
Yeah, you put me through that. And for Anybody that's fucking weirded out by the woo-woo chakra talk, I closed my eyes after our Eldoa session and saw a bright purple light in my mind. I mean, fucking back of my eyelids was bright purple for about 5 minutes before the phone rang and Aubrey pulled me back into reality to jump into a meeting. So those things are real. We can tap into those through yoga, through breath work, and through working in. But not to go too much off topic here. I know we have a more male audience that might be opposed to that. But, you know, in bringing up talks and things like that, as we dive a little deeper, it is important to be balanced. It is important to talk about what are good feminine qualities. And it doesn't mean like, you know, you need to throw on a fucking dress on the weekends to experience the feminine. No, you just have to have balance. You have to understand what are great masculine qualities that women should embody and what are great feminine qualities that men should embody. Because to be your best version of yourself, to total human optimization, right? That requires having a little of both. That requires having a little bit of give and take and to not forcefully fucking jam your fists through everything in the world, you know, to create that balance. And it starts within. It starts with you, right?
Sure. And one thing that, and this is something that I incorporate a lot of times with my athlete, and why I also love the unconventional training tool, is once again, we can go outside, we can get in nature, which it's much easier to tap into just a more restful, balanced kind of mindset and grounded mindset when you're outdoors, when you're barefoot. But one of the things you can do is you can use a totally simple exercise, like I said earlier, like a breathing squat. Everyone knows how to squat more or less, or should. And you can combine that actually with working out. So you don't even have to do 20 minutes. A lot of times the athletes that I work or train are very, very wound up, right? They're all day, whether they're a combat athlete or any other type of athlete, they tend to be typically wound up. And you don't have to do a 20, I mean, any therapeutic dose, even 1 minute done consistently of just a mindful practice of movement, whether even it's just going for a walk. Just going for a walk is plenty, but you can combine working in with working out and not only get a tremendous training effect, like let's use the example of even just a kettlebell deadlift, lightweight kettlebell deadlift, say 20 reps at a breathing pace. So inhaling on extension, exhaling on flexion, then setting the weight down and going into a breathing squat like a superset. So back to back. Now, the idea is as the heart rate rises during the working out activity, let's say, how quickly can you calm down the respiratory rate? How quickly can you calm down the heart rate so you can clear lactic acid and recover that much faster? So you can oscillate between those two. And it's a fun way. I treat it as a challenge. Like I challenge my athletes, like how quickly can you reduce the heart rate? How quickly can we recover? Let's just do 10 breathing squats at a slow pace. And that's a way that you can get, again, knock out two birds with one stone. And if that's where you start, that's tremendous. And that can take someone's athletic abilities as well as their mental capabilities. I mean, some of the best like mental expansion or the best tools that I've learned that I've taken into sports has all been coming from working in type movements or when I've combined them with working out, especially when you're in kind of that high state almost.
Yeah. And think of the benefit for a fighter. I know you work with some fighters. When would they need to calm themselves down? Fucking, all right, you're on the mat. You found a position where you can hang out for a second. Let's slow our heart rate back down. In between rounds, you got 1 minute, 5 minutes on, 1 minute off. You got to get your breath rate down pretty damn quickly to recover in between rounds. Football, it's a 6-second play. Maybe you get 30 seconds in between, before the next play. There's time there. And if you focus on using that time wisely, you can reset the system. Basketball, team just scored. They got to inbound the ball. You're jogging back. That's a time to work in. There's so many of these things in sport, but also in life for all the people that don't fucking play sports anymore. You're 35. You played high school sports. Now you dick around in the gym a few hours a week, but how does this apply to me? Well, getting in an argument with the wife, boss is yelling at you. How do you fucking reset the system? How do you calm yourself so your response is genuine and it's not out of anger and fear, right? This applies to fucking everyone on earth. And the more we tap into these things, the easier it is to get back into that relaxed approach where we can see all things and we don't have our blinders on in the fucking tunnel vision of fight or flight.
Totally. And you know what, too? Like, we can even bring it back to the mechanical side of things. So, I think the average person, don't quote me, the average person breathes, let's say, above 25,000 times a day. And what do we know about repetition, right? Repetition is the mother of all skill, especially if there's I'm sorry, repetition is the mother of all skill, provided there is perfect repetition, something like that, right? There's skill in the repetition. But we breathe so many times a day, so you can imagine if someone has a breathing dysfunction, it can magnify itself in so many other different ways of our life. But let's take a breathing squat, for example, because that's what we've been talking about. If you inhale on towards the top of the squat and you start raising your arms up over your head, one of the things that you notice is, again, we're working with our anatomy and physiology. As the rib cage opens, we're inhaling and we're raising our arms. How many guys do you know in the gym who have problem with the overhead range of motion?
Yeah, this guy right here.
Right. So we can ask ourselves, what is that? Is that a thoracic spine issue? Is the T-spine a challenge? Is it a shoulder issue? Is it a pec
Subscap,
issue? Is it
yeah.
subscap? Is it a lat issue? Or is it a rib issue? One of the things that I was totally unaware of, and back at home, I get regular body work. Used to get it about once a week. And, before I really started incorporating a regular practice of working in, especially a breathing squat, was, the ribs, in the intercostal, you should be able to get your fingers in there. So anyone who's listening right now, I would encourage you to put your hand right in between your ribs. If it's very painful, that's one sign that you might want to do some work there. Or if you can't fit your hands deeply in between the ribs and they feel locked up, imagine when the arm goes overhead, the ribs need to open up. So by just incorporating a breathing exercise, you can pump and you can get an opening effect there that'll directly translate into any of your overhead lifts. And especially with men in general, I mean, females not so much, because they tend to be more along the lines of hypermobile or a little bit more mobile in especially in the overhead position. But guys, just getting someone to breathe properly can open up the ribs and have a direct correlation to their lifting. So that can be a mechanical benefit that you can notice right away.
Yeah, and that's big, because where you're short in range is where you get hurt, right? Any chronic tightness you have, and myself included, actually right before I went to HLC1 in San Francisco, I had a slap tear on my right shoulder from trying to do a max effort snatch. But to begin with, I shouldn't even have been fucking around with a max effort snatch, because my overhead position was shit. I was run down from overtraining and fighting, those kind of things, right? So we have a barrier to entry that we should be making sure we have our prerequisites in order before we start going towards something like that, right? If our breathing mechanics are off, if we don't know how to get tight and activate the transverse abdominis, we don't really have any business trying to do a max effort deadlift, right? Because I don't know how to brace the spine. I don't know how to brace the core. You're just asking for an injury, right? So I think a lot of these things are base principles that, whether you're a professional athlete or just somebody that wants to get into better shape, these are things we need to focus on. They're things that really can prevent us from having to take 6 months off, or in my case, over a year, to get my biceps back to my ear overhead with the right arm, simply because I made that mistake of not listening to my body and not taking care of, where my blinders were, where my blind spot was physically.
I'm super happy to hear you say that. Pain teacher came in to bring a
Pain teacher, yeah.
Came in to teach a new level of awareness around that. But that's sometimes how we need to learn, and that's how it's interesting, as I transition to every single sport, when I look back at the times, it was always around an injury. So in every single sport, what I thought was the end of the road really opened up, and it's really what sent me to Paul. I went to Paul to heal an orthopedic injury that no one could figure out. I went to 9 different practitioners over the course of 2+ years. And he was the only person that actually could identify what was going on, which was a compartment syndrome in my arm. So the common medical advice was either get surgery or stop the sport that you love. And I refused both. But what I thought was just a devastating thing that was going to put me out forever really opened this whole new door into everything that I'm doing now. And really why I'm so passionate about getting this message about building the more balanced athlete that can hopefully incorporate both worlds, so that they're not only going to enter a fight or be a champion 1, 2, 3 times, that they can really continue their sport for as long as they have the dream to do it. And then they just won't be stopped in their natural evolution as an athlete because of an injury that could have been prevented, or an overtraining state, or something like that.
Yeah, and then they don't, move around like a fucking robot the rest of their life when they hang it up, right? They have some use of their body still, so when you're 40, you can still play with your kids, still run around, can still get freaky in the bedroom, find some new positions other than missionary and standing at the edge of the bed, right? It's important. People, fucking one of Paul's quotes that I absolutely love is sooner or later your health will be your number one concern. And we take shit for granted all the time. And I was just talking to Dr. Dan Engel about this. Oddly enough, that podcast will air after this one, but due to the powers that be in the podcasting world. But we take for granted those things, until they're gone, and fucking people write songs about that shit, but you really don't know what you have until it's gone. And that comes at a very high price when we talk about our physical health, right? Because it's so many people, especially, there's so many baby boomers out there that they think to themselves, I'll eat these good things. I'll add in the fish oil. I'll do that, but I'm not getting rid of this crap that I love because I've eaten this my whole fucking life. And guess what? I'm still here, and even my old man, when I try to talk to him about, like making sure my son is eating good food and he does a good job of trying to adhere to some of our requests. I would say he does an excellent job, but the old mindset, well, I raised you and look where you're at. Well, yeah, I had to undo some shit. I had to unwind some stuff. I grew up eating gluten like a lot of dudes in their 30s. Grew up on fucking cold cereal and non-fat milk and sandwiches for lunch. And it was fucking gluten 24/7, So yeah, I had some shit to unpack after that, literally and figuratively, and rewiring my system and putting healthy things in my body. But you can't take your health for granted, and really, I think being mindful of your body, paying attention to those things. And, even with all that I've learned and continue to learn, there's so much more to learn, and that's the beauty of it, is that if we pay attention and we try and we're disciplined in working on ourselves and, as Aubrey says, there's mindfulness in our meditation practice and how we go about the day. And there's mindfulness. What do we take in? What do we have, promoting ourselves for the future? What knowledge do we gain each day that makes us a better person? So now we have the tools necessary mentally to take ourselves to a different level so that we live each day better than the day we did before.
I love that.
Hell yeah. So let's segue right into fucking teacher plants because we've been playing with just the tip here for a minute.
Oh man.
So I've mentioned before on Aubrey's podcast and Joe Rogan's that some of the things that have helped transform me in a way that nothing else has. Have been plants like ayahuasca and psilocybin mushrooms. And even cannabis to a degree when used properly, have really they pull me out of my daily routine. They pull me out of my everyday thought pattern, the loop that fucking plays over and over again. And they allow me to see things, as Eckhart Tolle calls it, the observer. I can witness the mind speaking and know that I'm not that thing. I'm the thing witnessing it, right? And from there, I can see things from all angles. It changes perspective, and it's given me insight. And really, as they say, you could get a decade worth of counseling done in a day working with a plant, one of these master plants. What has been some of your experience and some of the knowledge gained working with some of the teachers?
It's been for me just in the past few years, and always it's been done, I'm very grateful. It's always been done very ceremoniously. So always with intention, always with a preparatory practice, diet before, harmonizing the body with the other people in the tribe around, and then also integrating it after. So it's always been done, in my experience, very beautifully. And so I've always had positive experiences with it. And my experiences, it's like you said, it's allowed me to develop a new perspective around life. And also, like even where I'm at right now, to be completely honest, it's, as an athlete, a lot of times it's all about you. Right? It's all about how can you get to that next level? How can you win that fight? How can I reach this number? Whereas now, as even I'm building my brand and whatnot, it's all about the message that I got in one of the most recent journeys was it has to be about the all. It has to be about everyone else. If I'm really to grow to the next level of the person I want to be and the person I'm dreaming to be, it can't be about me anymore. And so just that whole concept has completely changed my interactions with people, completely changed my level of gratitude, the people, even just being here and how grateful I am to connect with you at a deeper level and spend time with you and your family. It's really been one of the best, most therapeutic and and just most beautiful tools I've incorporated in my life. So I'm very grateful to the teacher plans and for all the people that have supported me in having a beautiful experience with those, because now I've realized like it was very much not about me. Even just the people around me who were a part of the ceremony were all holding space or were all a part of that experience. And we were talking the other night about the importance of tribe and fear, and how we can move through fear if we have a good tribe. If we, what did you say, like the buffalo?
Yeah, we talked about the buffalo. Parangi talked about this at Spirit Ranch, and again, we're getting weird here, but deal with it. He talked about the wisdom, the Native American wisdom that they take from animals and plants. And one of the wisdoms that is brought about from the buffalo is that when the storm comes, the buffalo does not try to outrun the storm, because that makes the storm last longer. They can't outrun it. So they get shoulder to shoulder with their pack, and they go fucking head first through the storm. Right?
Yeah.
But that takes having that good tribe. That takes having that, look, we're all going to stick together in this, and we're going to tackle this thing head on. And when you do that, they come out of the storm much faster. That's the fastest way through it, is to go fucking right head first into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you touched on a really important piece there, something that I've mentioned in the past. For people that are, wondering, like, where do I start? Things like that. There's an excellent book called The Psychedelic Explorer's Guide. Tim Ferriss did an episode on his show with Dr. Jim Fadiman. And they really talk about the importance of having a guide or a shaman to walk you through these things, to guide you through the tough spots. Because you talk to anybody and they'll say, oh, I tried that when I was in high school drinking with my friends and it was the worst experience ever. Well, yeah, there's a right way and a wrong way to do anything in life. And I think having the right intention, the right mindset, having the right environment, set and setting. Timothy Leary beat that drum till he put a hole through it. But it's important. That's why it keeps coming up, and I think fortunately for you, you had all these working pieces where people took you by the hand and guided you through these wonderful experiences. And the difference between doing it right and doing it wrong is astronomical. I mean, you do it wrong, you can have some very lasting issues. You do it right, and it can open up your world into a whole new light where you see things differently, you're more receptive, and you can be a bit more like the weeping willow, a bit more flexible.
Sure. And hopefully you're in a place where you've, at least managed, again, going back to the foundation principles, it's like if you can manage yourself in just the most foundational way, you'll be able to handle much more than you think. I mean, but if you're eating crap and you're not following the dietary regimen before, or you're just not drinking any water, you're drinking poor quality of water, you don't have a breathing practice, all those things are the tools that you have going into a ceremony to allow you to help manage and navigate that much better. So that's why I do think that putting an emphasis on managing the person can really, really help the experience. So, obviously always you hopefully have a good guide with you, but in terms of your ability to successful, I don't want to say successfully, but manage it and navigate it that much better can be increased.
Yeah, 100%, brother. Well, what else you got? You got some stuff coming up. I know you're working on with a lot of cool shit with Eli. Got some cool videos going.
Yeah, we got some really neat stuff. We got, so right now I'm working on a book. It's essentially going to be, one of my main inspirations is to get people out of the gym, outside, which is why the kettlebell is such a great tool and the amount of athletic abilities you can complete. But beyond that, this first book, it's kind of going to be like an encyclopedia or a guidebook. And it's going to be hopefully the most, I mean, it already is, but I'm trying to make it one of the most, if not the most comprehensive books out on anything and everything you can do if all you have is one kettlebell. So if all you have is one, how can you train for power, explosiveness, strength? And how can you train for the endurance qualities? And how can you also train in the, I love, one of the things I appreciate about the guys at Onnit and the kettlebell guys is they do a lot of flows. They do a lot of rotational stuff, which is kind of where in the most recent years where kettlebell training is going. So juggling, for example, all these kind of ways, how all these different methods you can use with the kettlebell. If you just had one, how can you get a phenomenal training effect? So that's one of the big projects that I'm working on right now, which probably will be available in the next about 2-ish months.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Fuck yeah. You got a title?
Yes, Kettlebell Performance, The Comprehensive Guide, Volume 1. And right now I've got a wait list online where people can sign up if they just go to mikesalemi.io/waitlist. And if you put your email in there, you'll be notified as soon as it comes out. And I'll also have some free guides that are available as well that you'll get for signing up as well.
Hell yeah. We'll link to that in the show notes. You might not have heard that because if you remember the movie The Water Boy with Adam Sandler, there's a fucking dude right outside this window on a drivable fucking lawnmower just wheeling it. I mean, 5 yards from our microphone. So apologies, but being flexible, we'll roll with the punches on that. And again, we'll link to that in the show notes in case you missed it. But hell yeah, man. I'm really looking forward to that. And you're continuing to work with Paul. Are you going to do, we talked a bit about how you've been so much into competition with kettlebell stuff that you said you're going to do one more. Is that right? When's that coming up?
I got one in beginning December, and I'm probably going to do, if not, that might be the last one for a little bit in February, but I've really realized I just need a break from the sport, and I've been working with more and more fighters over the years, and I've just been really inspired. And yesterday kind of just working with you on the match just lit a whole level of inspiration for me. And so I'd like to kind of move into that, see where it goes. If anything, it'll just give me a better appreciation. It'll humble me even more and teach me a lot that I can make any of the athletic programs that I come out with for fighters that much better. So I'm excited to get and spend more time on the mat and learn from some great people that I'm fortunate enough to have around me.
100%. Yeah, jiu-jitsu has been one of the most humbling things in my life by far. If you get knocked out in a fight, that's one thing. You can be like, well, I got clipped. It happens to the best of us. You get back into training. You don't worry about it. Hopefully let your brain heal. But when I fought Stephan Bonner, I was a blue belt. He was a black belt. It was my first fight in San Jose at the Shark Tank at my home. And he was teabagging me in front of the crowd in north-south position, just mashing his cup into my fucking mouth for a large portion of that 15 minutes. So, you talk about humbling. There's nothing like getting big brothered by another man where you're matched evenly for the most part. You're the same weight. They try to take as many factors out of the equation as possible for excuses, and you just get fucking ragdolled like that. I mean, it's deeply humbling, and quite a big reason why a lot of black belts that you see don't have a chip on their shoulders because they know they're a badass, but they've tapped thousands of times already on the mat just to get to that position. They've been put in shitty positions, and hopefully, and my recommendation to all people first starting out is tap often, tap frequently. Do not, they say check your ego at the door, but ego in a way is what makes you get better. Ego in a way is what keeps you going back. Ego in a way is what it gets you to try a move that you may not want to try. Like, oh, this looks like a badass move. I'm going to try it. So there is some balance to that being a benefit to us on the mat, but there's no place for ego when it comes to tapping, because the difference can be I tap quickly and we reset, slap 5, pump knuckles and get back to it, or I don't tap and I'm either getting woken up a minute later, or I don't tap and I now have to deal with an arm injury for the next 9 months. So a lot of stuff can go into that, and then the same goes to life. If you're a little bit more receptive and not trying to fight everything as you go, you can gather a lot more from there. But there's many lessons in jiu-jitsu that you'll find extrapolate out into the modern world.
I'm looking forward.
Hell yeah, brother. Well, I think we're just under an hour. We've got a fucking super packed schedule today, so we will have you back on for sure, and many times out to On It, hopefully. But yeah, we've got a stretching session, and then I got Kevin Ross, the Bellator kickboxing world champion, on a bit later, Muay Thai expert. So excellent having you, brother. Where can people find you online, on social media?
Yeah, so if they go to mikesalemi.io, that's the website. That's the best ways to find me. And right now on social media, I'm Kettlebell Lifestyle, but I'll also be updating that real soon. So just stay tuned on the website. There'll be a good announcement there and all the information on the programs we're coming up with, the Working In program with Paul Chek, as well as the encyclopedia guide that'll be coming up as well. So they can just look me up there, and that'll be a great resource.
Awesome, brother. Very much appreciated. Much love to you, brother. Thanks
for having me.
Thanks for coming out.
Yeah.